You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 43 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. I am your host, Walt White, and last episode I was so excited to give you news about a USPSA match where I won my division, and it was amazing how all this happens and how much extra pressure it puts on you when you win your first match. For whatever reason, I guess when my name made it to the top of the list at Southern Chester, there were a couple of people that were looking for me when I shot the following match at a different club. I had a couple of people come up to me and talk to me and congratulate me on my win the 2 weeks prior at Southern Chester, and a couple of people were kind of keeping their eye on me. So all of a sudden I felt this kind of pressure to have a repeat performance. Now, one of the reasons why I won the last USPSA match was because a lot of the usual guys, the high-ranked guys, were away shooting a larger match, a level 2 match, and there was the same conflict at the last match that I shot at Lower Providence. Different geographical location. I think one was in Western Pennsylvania, the other one was in the Virginia area. And so a lot of people were out of town again, and the kind of pressure was on. People were looking at me. People were congratulating me on how well I did, and I got that feeling like, okay, these guys are watching me. I have to live up to that performance, and I have to do it all over again. Well, I didn't win. I came in third place, which is fantastic. I'm really happy with that third place placement. However, I was a little disappointed I couldn't pull it off again. But I shot pretty decent. I had 2 lousy stages. I had 2 misses throughout the entire day, and they really kind of hurt my scoring. One miss, it was okay. I'm not particularly proud of it, but I shot the stage so remarkably fast that the miss didn't really come into account, and I still placed like top 5. Actually, I think I placed second on the stage, which I'm not quite sure how I did it, but timing is just, everything came together. It was beautiful. I shot the stage in, I don't remember whether it was I think it was a little over 4 seconds, like 4.2 seconds or something like that. It was 2 swingers, 2 poppers, and a third IPSC metric target. But I had a miss on the first swinger, but everything just sort of came together. One swinger came out, I shot it, moved right across. As I hit the 2 poppers, the other swinger was coming out. It was just beautiful. I couldn't have asked for a better timing, but I flubbed it with a miss on the first swinger. And then I had another miss later on, and I couldn't believe it. Every single shot looked like it was on target, right where it should have been. And then we get down there and we're looking, and there was a missing hole. So that was kind of disappointing, but third place, I really can't complain about it. I'm really happy with the way my skills are progressing. July will make 1 year that I've been shooting USPSA, and you have to remember that between like November and April, there's a big lag in when matches happen here in Pennsylvania. Actually, they're more or less shut down for the winter season. So there was kind of a big chunk in. So was it like March, April was when I got back into it again this season, and I'm just really happy with the way it's working and how my skills are progressing. I'm just, not to sound like a broken record, but I'm just happy. No podcast would be complete without my reminder of a contest that I've got going on my blog. So before we get too far along, I want to throw that out there again and remind you of what's going on. So a couple of months back, I started doing a 1 contest a month system on my blog. Each month I'll be giving away a signed copy of Shoot Your Guide to Shooting in Competition by Julie Golob. There was a winner selected the first month. I just mailed a book out to the winner of last month's contest, and here we are in June, and new month, new contest. So if you're interested in winning that signed copy of Shoot, head on over to waltinpa.com. At the top of the blog, I've since stickied the post, so you no longer have to go looking for it. At the top of the blog, you will see the contest link. Click on it. Inside, it will give you the particulars on who Julie Golob is, what the book is about. I read the book, I recommend the book, I've recommended the book to others, this kind of thing. And then further on down, there are the particulars on how to enter. And basically, I'm just keeping it really, really simple. 1 month I asked what shooting meant to you. Another month I asked what is on your just want list as far as gun accessories or firearms were concerned. And this month, all I want to know is what you're shooting. What are you shooting most often? Whether it be federal bulk packs of 555 rounds of 22 long rifle, or do you shoot a lot of federal 115 grain 9mm? Do you shoot 9mm 147 grain Winchester white box? Whatever the case may be, head on over there, fill that information in on the comment section, and you're entered. So really simple. There is no real wrong answer there. Just fill in that portion and you're entered to win, or you're entered for a chance to win a signed copy of Shoot, Your Guide to Shooting in Competition by Julie Golob. A couple of months back there was a post going around on Twitter, and I really don't remember whether or not I talked about it in the podcast, but a Twitter user, Gear Patriot, who has the Gear Patriot website, put together 101 Twitter users you should follow list for gun enthusiasts. And I clicked through, and it was really informative. There were a lot of people new to me that I wound up following over that list. There was some I'd just much rather not follow, the celebrity type and things like that. And then shortly after that, Tom from Fill Your Hands built on that list. It was called 101 Twitter users to follow, but I think there were only 88 users at that point in time. So Tom took the list of 88 and then built it out to, I think, 120. And he added a whole bunch more people that I hadn't been following, and it just wound up working really well. So I kind of got like a bug up my butt about wanting to build my own list. So I kind of took a different spin on it. I spent a little bit of time earlier this week, and I put together the 10, what did I call it? 10 Twitter users every gun nut should follow. And the difference here was I wasn't going for volume or anything like that. What I wanted was a good, solid list of people that are very active on Twitter and just are easy to interact with. So I put together a list of 10 people that I talked with on Twitter about guns on a regular basis and sort of feature them for you. So if you're a Twitter user and you're looking for some interesting people to follow as far as guns are concerned, check out this post on waltinpa.com. And click on through, follow the people, do what you got to do in order to take advantage of the list. I'm not quite sure whether or not I'm going to put a similar list together for Facebook or anything like that. Facebook seems to be a little more active, even though I'm constantly getting Twitter updates and things like that. I seem to get more interaction with Facebook, as odd as that sounds. Twitter being fairly short, 140 character limitations and things like that. It's generally fast paced, but I seem to get more interaction from readers and listeners on Facebook rather than Twitter. So I may put together something for Facebook later on. I'm not quite sure whether or not I'm going to do anything with Google+. I'm on it. I check it every single day, but I rarely use it. But every time I do use it, there seems to be virtually no responses. So I don't spend a whole lot of time updating it, things like that, as a result of those lack of responses. But in the future, I'll probably do 10 more Twitter users you could follow, things like that. The list that I put together was like 1,800 words, and it took me a little while, and I kind of got sick of piling people together and writing about them, a little blurb. So I just cut it off at 10 and made it simple for myself. So if you're interested, head on over and check it out. Well, at this point, I want to kind of derail the show and call a timeout and just kind of, do completely off the cuff little conversation here. Or not so much a conversation, just kind of let you know what's going on. In the past, when I do these recordings and I put them together, when I listen back in the editing process, I think, wow, that sounded really rough as I tried to record the entire opening segment in one long piece. The segues just weren't smooth. I wasn't scripting anything out, and it just felt really clunky and stuff. So last week I decided to break it up. I would record a little piece and then turn the camera off, record a little piece, turn the camera off, and for whatever reason last week it worked really well. I liked the way the transitions worked. I sort of led into the next piece without turning the camera on and going, well, here we are again, and things like that. So I really liked the way it worked. This week, not so much. I'm recording little bits, I'm playing them back, and I'm trying to edit on the fly so that it doesn't take me nearly as long tomorrow morning when I sit down in front of the computer at about 5 a.m. I want to try to get as much done as possible while I have the free time tonight. And I'm just not loving it. So my apologies if it sounds really jumbled and there really isn't much segue from one topic to the next. It's just not working for me this time around. I don't know whether I need to spend a little bit more time scripting it out. That's really not my thing. I'd much rather just turn the camera on and talk. It's the way I've always done it, and it's the way I'm most comfortable doing it. So again, my apologies if the beginning sounds a little goofy, but it can't be helped at this point. So, the last thing I want to talk about before we get into the news, getting back into the more serious podcaster tone here, is that I got word that there's going to be a GSSF match in the area in April. Now, GSSF is the Glock Shooting Sports Foundation. It is, just as the name implies, it's a shooting sports foundation that's built around Glock. If you go to this match, you'll be shooting a Glock. You sign up for membership through Glock, or I guess GSSF is like an offshoot of Glock, but it's all sort of under the same Glock umbrella. It's not a third party or anything like that that's sponsoring this event. It's Glock itself. And one of the really appealing parts of being a GSSF member is once you renew your second year, Glock will send you a certificate for a major discount on a new pistol. Actually, I think it's law enforcement and military discount. And there's limitations on where you can use it. You have to go to a Glock LE dealer. There is one that's not terribly far away from me. I've never been there before. I hear that they do a decent business, but I've never been there. However, the thought of getting like a brand new Gen 4 Glock 17 for like $300 and some is very appealing. So I may pony up the cash and join for that future coupon. So your first year you don't get any sort of coupon or anything like that. When you renew and for your second year you get that coupon. Or if you want to purchase a membership for 2 years, they will send you the coupon right away. So I'm not in a position where I want to purchase another Glock like right now. So I'm thinking about signing up for the membership, and then when I renew next year, maybe I'll be ready to pick up a new gun. But in any case, there's this match coming up, and I'm really interested in trying it because I hear they do a lot of prizes. From what I understand, you have a very, very good chance of winning something, whether it's a free renewal for your GSSF membership, whether you get some sort of like Glock branded knife, maybe you'll get a Glock tool. I've heard of brand new Glocks being given away, things like that. So depending on how many shooters show up, you have a really good chance of winning something. The more shooters that turn up, the more prizes they turn around and offer back to those participants. So I've been reading over how everything works. Tom over at Fill Your Hands put together a really interesting little post on GSSF and what you can expect to shoot while you're there, because the stages never changed, they're all the same. But I'm really considering signing up and doing this in August, because it's going to be in the area, and from what I understand, it's in the same place pretty much every year. It was at Topton Fishing Game last August. It's going to be at Topton Fishing Game this August. I would imagine they're going to do it next August. So with matches being relatively close to home, 30 minutes away, I'm thinking that it's really not a bad idea. I may sign up, go there. At the very least, I go, I shoot, I don't win anything, whatever, that's fine. But there's an armor on site. I'll get to look over your gun, or replace any parts that are showing wear. So I hear they really take care of their members, and I'm really close to to forking over my credit card information and signing up for a year of GSSF membership. Up this week in the news segment, I have 3 pieces of news, and the first one was brought to my attention before I even started putting my show notes together. I thought that was fantastic. It was a couple of hours after I published last week's episode. I had a note, hey, you got to check this out. It was Missy from over at Custom Gun Finishes sent me a note saying, you definitely need to check this out. It's really cool. So I clicked on through, and it's a news article from Yahoo News entitled Texas Gun Range to Host Children's Birthday Parties. With a topic like that, you've got to check it out. So, the news article goes on to say, a new gun range opening this summer in Lewisville, Texas will have 2 rooms available for hosted children's birthday parties. Owner David Prince tells WFAA that Eagle Gun Range will be available for children as young as 8 years old. The age limit is 8 years old. You have to be tall enough to get above the shooting table, Prince said. They're not going to be left unattended. Parents are going to be one-on-one. Or if there's not enough parents, we'll have range safety officers here to show them how to do it safely. While it may seem unusual to celebrate pairing young children with guns, it's not an entirely unique practice. Last November, an Arizona gun club hosted a day of Christmas photos where children could post with a man dressed as Santa Claus and semi-automatic weapons. That event reportedly drew hundreds of attendants. The soon-to-open Texas gun range has reportedly been well received by locals, though some nearby residents say they are opposed to letting such young children handle live firearms. It makes me very nervous, said Dawn McMullen, who has 2 sons and also has worked on past gun control efforts. I think 8 years old, developmentally, can't tell the difference between play and reality sometimes. And also, to put it in a party or game atmosphere just seems to not respect a gun as much as we should respect guns, she said. However, Prince said education is exactly what he has in mind by offering the range's services to budding marksmen. We truly believe it's a right and a privilege to shoot and bear arms, Prince told WFAA. But you have a responsibility to know how to do it well. It's your responsibility to know how to take care of your gun and how to use it. And that concludes the article. I thought it was really interesting who they picked for the opposing argument. Someone that was against this children's party with guns was someone that has worked on gun control efforts in the past. Obviously, they're going to be anti-gun regardless of what this gun shop is doing. Even if they weren't offering birthday parties and such, or offering to educate children on shooting, I would imagine she would still be opposed to it regardless. So it's kind of just my opinion. That's not fact or anything. My opinion is that no matter what this gun shop was doing, it would rub her the wrong way. So what do I think? Well, I think that this overall is a good thing. However, I think it has to be approached from a very cautious perspective. You've got children that are young, obviously. Girls and boys at 8 years old, they get into everything that they're not supposed to. They jump, they wrestle, they bang things around, they just generally cause a ruckus. And it's kids being kids. So in this environment, you really need to get them to focus, and that's going to be difficult, but I don't think it's impossible. I think that teaching young children how to shoot is very important, and will teach them skills that they can then lean on as they get older, whether or not they want to hunt or protect themselves, self-defense scenarios, things like that. I think that all in all, this is a very good program. It just, as long as it's managed properly, because it has the potential to become really bad really fast. But I like it. I like where it's going. I like this guy's mindset. There's parents there. There's going to be one-on-one instruction with children. There's going to be range safety officers there. Everything seems as though it's in order, and you really can't complain with something like that. So all in all, I'm glad that he's doing it. I wish there was something in my area like that, and I hope the 8-year-olds and older have a blast. Mm-hmm. Our second news topic of the episode isn't as upbeat. It's kind of got a somber tone to it. So kind of bear with me as I read through this. It's somewhat lengthy, but this comes from Trib Online Live News, and it is entitled, DA, No Charges for Wife in Gunfire in Indiana County. So it goes on to say, Jessica Fairman saw her father lying on the kitchen floor of her Indiana County home, bleeding from a fatal gunshot wound in the neck. as her estranged husband smashed a window to enter her home in North Mahoning early Sunday, police said. She grabbed a revolver from another room, and as her mother and 2 young children hid in the attic. She grabbed the revolver from another room as her mother and 2 younger children hid in the attic. She heard Sean C. Fairman breaking the glass and coming through the window. Lieutenant Bernard Petrovsky of the State Police Barracks at Punxsutawney said on Monday. She could hear him walking with heavy footsteps, and she could hear him coming up the steps. When Sean Fairman, 32, of Washington Township, stepped into a second-floor bedroom, Jessica Fairman pulled the trigger. She fired 3 shots, striking him twice, in the shoulder and bicep, Petrovsky said. He fell to the ground, and she stood over top of him, holding him at bay with her .22 revolver. Investigators said they will not charge Jessica Fairman, pointing to the state's castle doctrine, which permits the use of lethal force in a home or public place for protection. She was clearly in her residence, a residence that he had been evicted from as a result of a protection from abuse order. District Attorney Pat Dougherty said, clearly, she had retreated basically as far as she could go. If the castle doctrine is ever meant to apply, this is a classic example of it, he said. I believe she showed a tremendous amount of restraint. Wow, I'm really butchering this article. Sean Fairman was arraigned on Sunday on charges of homicide, burglary, and 2 counts of aggravated assault. He remains in jail without bail. Dougherty hailed Jessica Fairman and her father, Richard Schatz, 55, as heroes. Their actions likely saved the lives of Jessica's mother, Candace Schatz, and 2 of her children, ages 2 and 4, who all hid in the attic, Dougherty said. The Fairman's other 2 children, ages 7 and 6, were not at home. In many ways, I think Mr. Schatz is a hero, Dougherty said. He was there defending his daughter and grandchildren that night. I truly believe that if that man wouldn't have been there, he would have had the possibility of having more victims on our hands. His daughter had the wherewithal to get her gun, and she disabled him, Dougherty said. Police said Sean Fairman had 2 loaded guns when he arrived at the home. Richard Schatz attempted to calm him, but Fairman allegedly shot him through a kitchen window. Schatz died at the scene from a gunshot, according to the coroner, Michael Baker. Police said Sean Fairman learned on Saturday that his wife had filed for divorce on May 30th. Candace and Richard Schatz were staying at their daughter's home because she feared Sean Fairman's reaction. They were there to spend the night with her, Petrovsky said. There was definitely some concern. On May 12th, Jessica Fairman had filed a protection from abuse order, writing that her husband was threatening to kill her and himself. She said she believed Sean Fairman has an alcohol problem. He threatened if I told my father anything, he would take care of him, Jessica Fairman wrote. He has guns hidden all over the house and with ammo everywhere. A judge granted the PFA order on May 22nd and outlined a custody agreement. So here's a situation where a protection from abuse order, basically a slip of paper, a restraining order, a slip of paper did nothing to prevent this guy from not only coming after his estranged wife, but killing her father and potentially killing her. You know, had this guy got into the house after he killed her father. Obviously, he's kind of mental. If he can kill her father, he would have killed her next. Maybe at some point he would have taken his own life. But you've got to remember, there is the mother. If he killed the father, why would he not kill the mother? And he's got 2 children in the house too. So, you know, this has bad written all over it. And you know, I agree with the police officer here. I think the father was a hero. He stayed in the home. He tried to protect his daughter. Unfortunately, he was killed in the process of protecting his daughter, trying to talk this gunman down, and it didn't work. He winds up dying. The gunman comes in the home, and fortunately, the wife had the means to protect herself and had the ability to protect herself. So I'm really glad that she was able to make it out alive, and her children are safe and her mother is safe, and it's really unfortunate that her father had to die in this entire mess. The last piece of news that I have for you comes from Guns Save Lives. And this website it sort of does the same thing I do in the sense of the podcast, where I'm scouring the web looking for different news articles, and then I bring them out and I talk about them. In this case, it looks as if Guns Save Lives scours the web looking for interesting news articles where guns save lives, and then publishes that information on the web. And I've found a number of really interesting stories here in the past, and I thought this one was pretty good. This one is entitled Tennessee Resident Shoots and Kills Armed Robber. Now, the write-up is really short from this website, and there's some embedded video. I would strongly suggest you check out the video. But the article goes on to say, a resident of a Tennessee apartment complex says 2 men attempted to rob him. That's when he drew his own gun. The resident opened fire on the would-be robbers, hitting one. The other robber escaped, presumably unarmed. One of the bullets from the gun fired went into a neighbor's apartment and into their living room. Remember, always be sure of your target and what is beyond, even in a self-defense situation. A little planning in regards to caliber and ammo choice, as well as identifying nearby neighborhoods ahead of time, can make a big difference. And the video is less than 2 minutes long. It's basically a news clip of the anchorman of sorts talking about it a little bit, and then he goes on location with another reporter that's in the apartment owner's home, the one where the bullet went through. And I have a great deal of respect for this woman by the way she views this whole situation. You know, she says, you know, it's a really scary situation to have a bullet come through your window. It came through my porch window. My children generally play video games in this room. You know, for one reason or another, they decided to play in a back room this particular evening, so no one was in the room when the bullet came through. But you know, it's a scary situation nonetheless. And she says, you know, I understand what happened. I don't fault the guy for what he did. He did what he had to do to protect himself, and you know, he acted in self-defense. I can't get mad at him. And I just thought that was just tremendously big of her to say something like that. And you know, she earned a great deal of respect by viewing it in that particular light. I mean, it's really easy to take a defensive situation in that scenario and say, well, you know, you've got gunfire outside my window, bullets coming in my home. It doesn't matter, you know, that this guy was being attacked. He should have never fired. Things like that. You know, it's really easy to spin it that way. But I'm glad that she viewed it in this sense, and then went on to say, you know, in a similar situation, I would have shot as well. You know, it just so happened the bullet went through my living room. That's, you know, it's a scary situation. I mean, think of yourself in that position. You know, you're being robbed. It's really difficult to plan a route or you know, plan something ahead of time, especially when you're talking about outdoors in a parking lot. You know, when you're planning a defensive scenario in your home, you can say, okay, you know, if something happens in the night and someone comes through my front door or they come through a window, you know, my bedroom's here, my children are sleeping here, you know, this is where I would retrieve my gun and position myself here, this way that when I fire a shot, if it misses and goes through a wall, I'm not going to hit a neighbor's house, you know, it's not going to go towards the children, you know, and you map out that zone, that safe zone of where you're safe to shoot. It's really difficult to do that outside in say a parking lot where you've got people attacking you. You don't know if the guy was falling down as he was firing, if something was going on where he was being hit and he was just trying to shoot. It looks as if she may have been up on a second story, so that gun had to be pointing up a little ways for that bullet to punch through her porch window. But in any case, I'm glad that the guy being robbed was able to get out of this okay. You know, it doesn't look like he was injured or hurt in any way. It would have been a horrible situation if that stray bullet would have hit someone in the home. I'm really glad that didn't happen, and I'm really glad that the homeowner is or the apartment owner or the apartment renter is understanding of what happened and is in agreement in the sense that she would have done the same thing. I mean, the bullet shouldn't have went through their living room, but it happened and no one got hurt, and I'm glad for that. Just I hope that if this ever happens again, that the muzzle stays down and the bullet goes through the bad guy. No misses if possible. But there is your third and final news article for the podcast, and that's going to wrap up the news. It is time for the cigar and drink pairing of the episode, and I want to make this kind of brief. My cigar is getting kind of short. It's getting a little warm. It's burning a bit faster than I was expecting. But the coffee that I'm drinking is Newman's own extra bold coffee. It's the same stuff that I had last episode. And we're getting down to the last couple of K-cups. And even though that it's over 90 degrees outside, I still like having a cup of coffee with a cigar. It's a bit cooler in my basement, so it's not so bad, but even on these hot days, I still like grabbing a cup of coffee and having a cigar to go along with it. I think the flavor profiles work really well if you select the right cigar. In this case, the cigar I'm smoking is the Padron 2000 Maduro. Now, the 1000 series of Padron, I believe there's a 2000, a 3000, a 5000, a 6000. There may even be a 4000 in there, but the 1000 series Padron is sort of the base model of Padron cigars. They're really known for their higher end stuff, their 1964s or 1926s, their little hammers. They make cigars that run anywhere from the low end, probably $9 for the 1964, and I think the little hammer is around $28. So their upper end stuff can get pretty pricey. The base models, on the other hand, I think I paid $4 and some odd cents for the 2000 Maduro, and I think they're great cigars in terms of flavor. They have nice, rich coffee tones. They go really, really well with coffee. Obviously, coffee tones plus coffee equals coffee times 2, which is really good. So the flavor profile really works for me. They smoke fairly well. The only issue I have with Padrones is, for whatever reason, everyone seems to give them a pass on construction. This cigar is lumpy, it's mushy, it's burning faster than it should be. I've got a pinhole in the filler, which is making the smoke kind of airy, and it's making it heat up prematurely. The cap was practically falling off, and this is standard for base model Padrones, and even some of the more expensive Padrones can get a little sloppy. I'm not quite sure why everyone gives them a pass, but everyone looks the other way, or I shouldn't say everyone. The majority of people that I've ever talked to in a cigar shop or online about cigars will look the other way about Padron construction issues, because they are sort of, I don't want to say the holy grail of cigars, but Padron is really up there in terms of the hierarchy of cigar manufacturers go. So for whatever reason, people look the other way on construction issues, but they taste great. So for the money, they're kind of finicky, and you have to fight with them a little bit, and sometimes there's an issue here and there. But in terms of flavor, they're well worth it for something. That $4, $5, $6 a piece. So if you're interested in trying the Padron 1000 series, I really prefer the Maduros over the naturals in any Padron. Actually, if there is a natural and Maduro offering in the line, 9 times out of 10, I side with the Maduro offering when it comes to Padron. But if you're interested in trying these, I would suggest purchasing them through my preferred retailer, which is Mike over at Buckhead Cigars in Atlanta, Georgia. You can pick up the phone and give Mike a call at 404-844-0400. Mike also has a website, askthecigarguys.com, where Mike lists all of the newer product stuff that he's featuring, with box and 5-pack pricing. Shipping is always included in those prices. So it's not a retail site, it's just a price listing. So look up some of the stuff that you want to try, pick up the phone, give him a call, place your order. If you want to kind of get a feel for Mike, talk to him a little bit ahead of time, you can do so on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. Mike is on all 3 of those services as Buckhead Cigar. So do me a favor, if you're interested in trying the cigar, purchase it through my preferred retailer. He's a good friend of mine, my absolute favorite cigar retailer, and he's a fellow gun nut as well. If things seem a little out of order to you, it's because they are. Generally, I like to do the podcast in one fluid motion. I do the pre-news stuff first, then I do the news, and then I roll into featured content, and then I'll do the cigar and drink pairing, followed by the discussion topic, and then the closing. And everything is recorded one after the other. It's one smooth, sort of linear progression right on through the show. Well, I was running into a problem because my cigar was getting kind of short, and I didn't want to record the cigar and drink pairing when it was supposed to be recorded and have this tiny little nub of a cigar pinched between my fingernail and my thumbnail. So I decided to record it early, and then what I was going to do was tack it on after the featured content. However, the anal side of me said that just doesn't work. I like doing everything in a linear sort of motion, so I recorded that piece. I stuck it right at the end of the news the news segment, and now we're going to roll into featured content. My apologies if there sounds like there's a bit more noise in the background. It's because there is. It's getting kind of warm in here under these halogen lights, and it's kind of warm outside to begin with, so I'm glistening a bit if you're watching the video. I can't help it. I've got the fan on maximum warp speed. That's making a fair bit of noise. I got the exhaust fan on as usual. So my apologies for the little extra noise. Hopefully, the content makes it all worthwhile. So, first up in featured content. When I started the show notes earlier this week, I only had one piece of featured content to talk about, and I was a little concerned going into the podcast just not having enough content. It just so happens that something fell into my lap, and it just worked out perfectly. So earlier in the week, actually over the weekend, I decided that I was going to get out of the house. I was just kind of tired of sitting around. I'd been doing yard work and stuff throughout the weekend, and my wife and daughter were away. I was just kind of sitting in front of the TV twiddling my thumbs. So I decided, I haven't been to the gun shop in quite a while, and I really need to get down there and kind of check out what's new and just kind of shoot the breeze at the gun shop. So I grabbed my car keys, I headed down to the gun shop, and on my way down there I thought, okay, outside of just sort of going there to gab, maybe I'll pick up a spare magazine for my Glock, for US PSA shooting, so that I have 6. I have 5 as it stands. And that was kind of the plan. Go down there, pick up a magazine, talk a little bit, I'll spend $25 and I'll kill maybe an hour and a half. So when I get down there, I started talking, and before I knew it, I glanced up at the clock and they were going to be closing in like 10 minutes. So I asked the guy behind the counter, hey, do you have Glock 17 magazines, the 17 round capacities, or the 17 round capacity magazines? And he says, yeah. He starts looking, and apparently they didn't have any new. Generally they're $25. I like buying them from there because they're a little bit cheaper than buying them online at some of the places that I've ordered from in the past, and I don't have to pay shipping, so I just buy them locally. But he didn't have any new. But he did come out from behind the counter with a used magazine. He says, hey, I don't have any new, but I've got this used one, $10, and it's yours. And sort of the light bulb went on. $10 for a used Glock branded magazine. It's stamped Austria, it's stamped Glock. What could go wrong? So I'm kind of staring at it. I'm looking it over. It's well worn. However, it should work just fine. It's got some scrapes in the polymer. It shouldn't be a big deal. So I said, by any chance, do you have any more? So he goes behind the counter and pops an extra one on the counter, and then another one on the counter, and another one on the counter. So I've got 4 sitting in front of me. I'll take them all. So I paid $40 for 4 magazines, brought them home, and when I got home, I was looking at them a little closer. The one magazine is just like the Gen 3 Glock magazines that I have. It's got the full metal lining inside. When you look at the rear of the magazine and you look through the little holes so that you can determine how many rounds are in the magazine, you can see the metal liner through the holes. On 3 of the other magazines, however, you can't see a metal liner, and there isn't a button on the base plate for removal. So I wrote up a blog post talking about purchasing these used magazines, and Tom from Fill Your Hands shot me a message on Twitter. He said that it looks like the magazines that I have without the button on the bottom are the old style that don't have a full metal lining. He said it's only on 3 sides. And he said, you need to be careful, make sure you test them plenty, because over time the parts wear, and what happens is when you start to load up the magazines, you'll actually get some push in the magazine. You'll get, the magazine will bulge a little bit, and if you're trying to eject the magazine out of the gun and there's still rounds in there, that bulge will get caught inside the mag well, and sometimes you'll have to grab the magazine and pull it free. Gravity won't do all the work. And he pointed me to a blog post where he discussed that. I guess it was back in 2011, when one of his older magazines that didn't have the full metal lining died on him. And he was sort of discussing the situation, how long he had had it. I think it was from like 1992 to 2011. The magazine finally gave out on him. And he was talking about what caused the failure and the stresses and how the magazines go bad and things. And that kind of got me a little concerned. I was all excited. I got four new Glock magazines, or 4 new to me Glock magazines for $40, bringing my total up to 9. I was all excited, but it turns out now 3 of them I have to be kind of concerned about because they don't have the metal lining all the way around. So the blog post actually worked out really well in educating me on older Glock magazines. I'm going to take them to the range, test them out quite a bit, see what happens. If they fall free from the gun, great. If not, when I purchase them, the guy behind the counter says, hey, look, Glock magazines don't generally go bad. For whatever reason, if they don't work, bring them back and, we'll take them off your hands. So I'm going to test them a bit. If they work, great. If not, 3 of them are going back, and I'll just get my money back, and, maybe I'll turn that $30 into a $25 brand new Gen 4 Glock replacement magazine. So that, in a nutshell, is your first featured content post. So head over to Tom's post over on Fill Your Hands and check out and get yourself a little education on the older Glock magazines that don't have a full metal lining. The second piece of featured content has been an absolute nightmare. For the past, 10 minutes, I think I've recorded the opening for it 4 or 5 times. I stumble, I lose track of my point. I stopped the camera, I mopped the sweat off my head. I've broken into a full-blown sweat. It's like incredibly hot down here. And, the halogen lights beating down on my forehead are not helping. So I'm going to do this one more time. We're going to power through it. If it sounds bad, I'm sorry. If it sounds great, awesome. So here goes. The second piece of featured content comes from Everyday No Days Off. It's a blog that I've talked about in the past. There's a wide variety of topics that are posted there. There's light-hearted gun songs, which are always entertaining. There are analysis of news, different political things posted every now and again. And one of my favorites is the posting of videos and then commenting on the videos. So for instance, there may be just some absurd training tactic where you've got people being beat with bamboo logs while trying to fire a gun. And then there's sort of kind of like a breakdown to that absurd video. Or maybe you have something like the gun gripes, which they do on a regular basis, are posted, where you've got 2 guys that are in a pawn shop / gun shop in Georgia discussing just different gun gripes. Sometimes they talk about different complaints that they have inside the store. Sometimes they discuss weapons. Sometimes they discuss customer reactions or terminology, things like that. And in this particular episode, the gun gripes guys are talking about firearm law. And they keep talking about, wow, I'm butchering this again, but you know what, I'm not turning the camera off. What it boils down to is the title of the video is What's Good for the Goose? And they start discussing different firearms laws, and they're sort of basing what they're discussing off of Georgia, because that's where they're at. And they talk about how stressful it is that different states, or not even different states, but different counties within states can have different gun law and different gun ordinances. So for instance, one guy in the video talks about recently renewing his permit to carry. It's a process that took him a couple of days, and I think he said he had a renewed permit within a week. He said if he lived in the county next door, the process takes approximately 80 days. So there's definitely a stress level between gun laws in this portion of the state versus 15 miles away in the next county over. And that problem is only compounded when you take a broader look. So gun law in Georgia is different than gun law in Kentucky, or gun law in Virginia, or gun law in California. Different states have different laws and ordinances. And one of the things that they discuss is how everything should be equal. It should be, if it's a matter of a week's time and some paperwork for him to get a gun permit, the same thing should apply to citizens in California or citizens in New Jersey. They shouldn't have to jump through all these excess hoops or have their rights stripped away from them because they live in a May issue state. So it's really interesting discussion of the laws. I agree with 99% of the things that they say in the video. It's if you've discussed pro-gun law with people in the past, or if you've discussed pro-gun topics with people in the past and law comes up, you've heard it all before. It's nothing new. However, I just kind of like where they go with it, and I like the way they discuss it. However, there was a portion of the video that I kind of had a problem with. They keep talking about what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if they can get a gun permit in Georgia in 7 days or whatever it is, then the same should apply for California. Well, what if you switched those two around? What's good for the goose is good for the gander kind of thing, only backwards. So if California is a May issue state and you can't get a gun, and you have to, and if for whatever reason you do get a gun, you need to be purchasing guns that are on the approved list and yada yada yada. Why is that not good for the goose or good for the gander or whatever it is in Georgia, where you have to jump through those same hoops? I think that they're sort of overlooking states' rights in this issue, or in this case. Now, I understand that the right to keep and bear arms is our Second Amendment right. It is it's in our Constitution. States' rights should not supersede the list of wow, I'm butchering this. I want to say commandments. I'm just total brain fart here. state rights should not supersede the Constitution, and I'm sort of that mindset. However, things get really muddy when you start talking about different states and how their gun laws work and things like that. I think everything should be like constitutional carry kind of a thing, where you don't need licensing as long as you're not of the criminal element. There shouldn't be any hoops to jump through. I'm really fortunate in Pennsylvania, or at least in my county, we can get our licenses in a matter of like 15 to 20 minutes. It's just a matter of going to the courthouse with your paperwork. You pay $25, they take your picture, they do a background check, they hand you a license, and you're good to go. A couple of counties over, you need a police check card, you need to jump through hoops. It takes 45 days or whatever it is. In Philadelphia, it's even worse because they have a system in Philadelphia where they can use this clause. Actually, they can use it anywhere in the state. However, Philadelphia seems to abuse it. And essentially, they can just say, okay, based on your history, you've got unpaid parking tickets, blah, 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 this, that, you've ran traffic lights, speeding, you're not of good character, and we don't think you should be able to carry a gun, so we're not going to issue you a license. And there's that character clause in there that Philadelphia seems to abuse. We are a may issue state, and it's kind of gun friendly everywhere except for Delaware County, Philadelphia, and I guess Pittsburgh is kind of an issue too. But again, I'm getting kind of off topic. Check out the video on Every Day No Days Off and listen to the Gun Gripes guys. The discussion topic of this podcast has sort of morphed into a question. I kind of want to think out loud a little bit and then ask your opinion on something. And initially, I was going to include this little piece in the pre-news discussion. However, I didn't have a discussion topic, so I just kind of moved it down in the show notes. And because I'm getting kind of long, we're getting up around 50 minutes at this point, I want to kind of breeze through this and make it relatively quick. So what I want to discuss, or what I want to talk about and ask you about, is training. I decided earlier in the year that I wanted to take some form of training class this year. And the more I think about it, the more I want to try to take one class every year. Depending on the class, if it's fairly low in terms of money, maybe I'll take more than one class throughout the year. But more often than not, I'm thinking it's going to be one class per year. And initially, my plan was to take an NROI, which is the National Range Officers Institute Range Officer Seminar, which would allow me to run shooters at USPSA matches. It's not a class in the defensive sense. It's not a class that would allow me to teach others anything. However, it is something that would allow me to give back to the shooting community. I've had such a good time with shooting and enjoyed myself so much that I wanted to turn around and volunteer some of my time back to the community. And taking this seminar would allow me to volunteer more at USPSA matches so that I could be a range officer at a given match, run shooters with a timer, things like that. And I really like that idea. And the cost was very affordable. I think it's $40 cost to the student. However, I think it's a much larger cost to the hosting club. But I've been keeping an eye on the website, the USPSA website, and unfortunately, there's nothing in the area. The closest class to me was in New Jersey a few months ago. Actually, I think it was back in like January, February, and it was all the way out in New Jersey. So by the time I drove out there, it's probably a 2-hour drive out to Jersey. I'm terrified to go into New Jersey based on their gun law anyway. So but I wouldn't have to take a gun or anything, so theoretically I could have gone, but it would have been a 2-hour drive out, a 2-hour drive back, a 2-hour drive out the following day, a 2-hour drive back. It was just a lot of time in the car, a lot of time invested just traveling. And it would have made a lot more sense to get a hotel room out in the area so that I could go out there for 2 days and just be close by. Unfortunately, it just kind of didn't work out. It was too far away. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go through all the trouble of driving to New Jersey and getting a hotel room and things like that. So I decided to pass on that class, and I've been keeping an eye on the schedule, looking for something in the eastern side of Pennsylvania to pop up. Unfortunately, no classes have become available, and it doesn't look like any more are going to be scheduled throughout the year, at least not in this area. So that's kind of fallen off the page. I would love to take an RO cert class, an RO certification class. Unfortunately, it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. So next on the list, I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll take an NRA class. Not so much an NRA class for me, the student, but an NRA class that would allow me to teach other disciplines. For instance, a couple of years ago, I took an NRA basic pistol class, an NRA basic pistol safety class with my wife. We really enjoyed it. We were completely new to firearms, and it was very beneficial to us. The information was very basic, and based on my skill level now and how basic the class was, I am very confident that I would be able to turn around and teach the same things that I was taught back when I took that class. So I started looking around at the NRA certifications. There are only 2 people that offer it in the area. Their schedules seem to vary a little bit, and the price for one instructor is like $350. Price for another instructor is like $400. I don't know whether it's a group class. If it is a group class, that seems like a lot of money for this NRA certification. However, the whole premise behind it is so that you can teach others and make a business out of it. That's really not my intention. I want to become NRA certified so that I can offer these classes to friends and family and then charge a couple of dollars over cost. So, you know, take into account whatever time it takes me to drive to a family member's house. I have a lot of family that live about an hour away. So figure, you know, an hour's worth of gas and then an hour's worth of gas back home, whatever books or literature costs to give them the course, you know, whatever the certification costs, a little placard with their name on it costs. You know, take all that into account and then throw in a couple of bucks for my time. Something minimal, you know, something that would allow me to give back to friends and family. And, you know, again, getting back to giving back to the community, which is kind of where all this is coming from. Because of how expensive it is, I don't know that I want to make that investment because I don't think I'll ever make it back. Or if I do make that $400 investment back, it's going to take me years. I don't plan on teaching a lot of classes, and I don't plan on charging a lot of money. So the profit margin is teeny tiny. So I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know whether I want to make that big investment for something that I'll never see a return on. Because again, I don't plan on making this a big booming business and marketing it and trying to make money hand over fist by offering lots of different classes. Not that other instructors are making money hand over fist or anything, but you know, my intention is not to become a full-time instructor or even a part-time instructor. You know, I just want to be able to offer classes here and there. So I'm sort of on the fence. I don't know if I want to make that big investment or not. I don't know that I feel as though it's worth it. I've heard much lower numbers from other people. I've been asking around a little bit on different forums and things like that, and it seems like people in other states or in different areas of my state are paying much less for this NRA cert. So I'm not quite sure what I want to do on that front. The other option is there's a fairly large training facility in the Harrisburg area. That's where, if Maduro comes to town, I think he goes there. You know, if the Insight training is in town, it's usually held in this area in Harrisburg. There are a couple of other trainers in the area. However, they don't come as highly recommended as this place in Harrisburg. Prices for that class range, I think they're around the $400 area. They're 2 days long, and it's a lot of range time. The recommended round count is something like bring 600 and bring extra. So, you know, count on firing 600 rounds, but bring some extra. So it's a lot of time behind the trigger. And I think it would be very beneficial for me personally. It's not something that I feel like I could turn around and give back to the community, so I'm not really sure where I want to go. At this point this year, I would like to take something that allows me to give back to the community. Maybe next year I'll take a defense class or something like that, a concealed carry class, you know, something like an insights training class, or I'd love to take a Mag 40 class. But again, I talked about that last week, just the cost of the class is just well outside of my budget. So the whole part of this that boils down into the question is, if you were in a similar situation where you had a limited budget and you wanted to give back to the community, what direction would you go in? Would you consider taking that NRA cert so that you could teach basic pistol or basic rifle or basic shotgun or defense inside the home or defense outside the home, you know, whatever the barrage of NRA offerings are? Or would you sort of pass that overall, take a defensive pistol class or some sort of defensive class, and then maybe offer what you've learned there to friends and family? Exactly, you know, what would you do if you were in a similar situation? Because I'm kind of baffled. I'm really not sure which direction I want to go, but I do want to give back to the community in some way, shape, or form. It's about time to wrap up the podcast, but before I do, I want to thank you for listening, watching, downloading, subscribing to Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. If I've said something that's, I don't know, spurred a thought, said something that has angered you or just inspired you to reach out and contact me, you can do so in a variety of ways. The easiest way is to head on over to my blog, which is waltinpa.com. Click on the contact link and fill out the form. Click submit. It'll send me an email and I will get back to you as quickly as possible. If you would rather use your own email client and attach an audio file to be included in the next podcast or include a video clip, please feel free to send me an email at waltinpa.com. Again, I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. I'm also on a variety of social media outlets. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus as WaltW, or Walt. In the case of Twitter, it's at WaltW. Facebook and Google Plus is Walt White. My blog also has a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/WaltInPA. If you click on like, you will be subscribed to different gun topics that I post there. It's a lot of USPSA video and just general gun topics that I post on my blog that don't make it into the podcast. In addition to social media, I'm also on the Gun Rights Radio Network forum. I have a Shooting the Breeze section where I post a new topic with each episode release. Every time I release an episode, I post a new topic. Feel free to use that to make comments, suggestions, things like that. And speaking of the Gun Rights Radio Network, they're still in need of your money. If you've got a few bucks to spare, head on over to the Gun Rights Radio Network, click on support, and you can purchase a subscription. I think it's about $2 a month or $24 a year. The money accumulated there helps keep the servers running and basically the lights on at the Gun Rights Radio Network. While you're there, check out some of the other podcasts that are available. Some of my favorites are Gunfighter Cast, Gun Dudes, the Road Gunner podcast, the Politics and Guns podcast. There's just a slew of them. The Power Factor Show. There's a handful that I try to keep up with. It's really tough because there are so many, but there are just some great options of entertainment for your listening or viewing pleasure. So that's going to do it. Thanks for checking out episode 43 of Shooting the Breeze, and until next time, take it easy.
You can hear Gun Rights Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today at Stitcher.com or in the app stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. Gun Rights Radio Network shows can be found under Sources.